This song makes me think of my sister Star and her 14-year-old Daisy Duked ass hanging outside of a window. Twerking before twerking was ever a word in our vernacular. It was the summer of 1997, and I was 11 years old, and my little broken family was moving to Daytona Beach, Florida, from our sleepy little suburban burg outside of Detroit. Our lives were so full of possibility and excitement that summer, like so many hopes and dreams. I hoped to graduate from being the weird, shy girl to being popular. My sister Cassie hoped for a tan. My sister Star and brother Jeremiah hoped to get in trouble. And my mom just hoped that her kids would somehow end up on the right path. As the youngest of 5 children, I was totally a mama's girl. I was to the T, a mama's girl. But Star and Jeremiah, on the other hand, were not. They were the type of kids that when my mom would spank them, they would laugh at her. So, needless to say, they were getting into a lot of shenanigans where we grew up in Michigan. And so my mom wanted to kind of get them into a different environment. So my mom thought a change of scenery would be, good for all of us, and what better place to move than to her hometown of Daytona Beach, Florida. The irony of trying to keep her teenage children out of trouble by moving to the spring break capital of the world is not lost on me as an adult. The trip to Florida was less of a trip than a parade, okay? So there was my mother, there was me, my sisters Cassie and Star, Cassie's best friend Brandy, Brandy's sister April, who was dating my brother Jeremiah at the time, so of course there was Jeremiah, and our brother Chris, who was driving the U-Haul. It was probably the biggest U-Haul that has ever existed to man. Chris was 18, going on 40, and far more trustworthy to drive a big truck than my mom, though at 4'11", I'm not entirely sure she could reach the pedals. So on July 2nd, the U-Haul was picked up, and we had 2 days to fill it up with all the crap we had accumulated over the years. Packing started out so deliberate and purposeful, with boxes being taped neatly and the room it belonged to written in even letters. Toward the end of packing, though, my mother just started throwing things randomly in boxes, saying, "Oh, we'll figure it out when we get there." It's kind of been the theme for my family for generations. That night, or on July 4th, we crammed into 2 cars and 1 U-Haul, and we're off down the 75. I think my mother planned our moving date as a sort of symbolic gesture, as if we were going off to our freedom. I'm sure to my mom, it felt like freedom, leaving the place of miserable winters to go to the land of beaches and sunshine, leaving behind the cloak of disappointment that was her 16-year relationship with my shitty dad. I admit, even at the time, I knew I wouldn't miss my dad. So it felt like freedom, I think, for many of us. Maybe not for Star, but for many of us. So that night, as we were driving, we drove through the hills of Tennessee, and we could see fireworks all around us, all in the hills below. Just so bright, and the stars were brighter than anything we had ever seen where we were from. And it was so beautiful. It felt like change. It felt like a dream. We stayed at a motel very high in the hills that night, and in the morning the fog was so thick you could hardly see. As we started up the parade again, we sneaked carefully around the hairpin turns. Then boom, the fog lifted and we could see down. It looked like 1,000,000 miles down to the town below. The guardrails looked too small to contain us should we get into an accident. I was terrified. But we made it through. Really, we made good time and had minimal incidents. It was sort of a miracle. When we reached the Florida state line at sunset on July 5th, we cheered and honked the horns. Then, like fate, the song Ain't Nothing But a Hoochie Mama came on, and all of a sudden, you had an 11-year-old, 2 12-year-olds, a 14-year-old dancing like they were not white girls who grew up in the suburbs, that is for damn sure. Star rolled down her window and stuck her butt out as drivers honked their horns, and my mom had to pull off at a rest stop so she wouldn't pee her pants from laughing so hard. I'd never forget how it felt to see our house in person for the first time. We got out of our cars and were hit with the heavy humidity. Through the darkness, we could hear the ocean from a block and a half away. Lizards ran from under our feet as we entered the big screened-in porch to the beautiful 2-story peach craftsman-style house that was to be our home. There were tropical plants and a gazebo on the side of the house and a beautiful backyard with a grapefruit tree and a pond with a fountain that actually worked. It was like the Garden of Eden. And inside there were hardwood floors and crown molding and a clawfoot tub in the bathroom upstairs. We ran around exploring everything we could. And we were hopeful. We were happy. We were home. Thank you.